Welcome to Podcast This Escape, the podcast where we talk about the escape room we escaped from in the previous episode of this podcast.
Which was escape
No,
terrestrial.
I'm not saying escape more times. Jonah, Daniel, you did it. Congratulations.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well done on, all the images and the design. That was great.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, thank you very much for getting us started on this little alien story.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, I hadn't heard the ending before you guys did, so that's a bit fun. There's now, I mean, obviously, like it's ET-ish, so I suppose there had to be a little boy who knew that you were an alien. I suppose that's
He's a young
the logical
man,
next
not a boy.
step. A tiny baby child, a 4-year-old. I think you guys did really well. There was some tough stuff in that room.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
like as Danny, I think we warned you before we started. I don't know if it made the edit, but we warned you like the first big puzzle is like a really tough puzzle. Like it required a lot of stuff going on. But you did it, and it all came together. Did you guys have like as you were playing, like a moment that you felt smart, that you enjoyed as a player?
I liked just assigning, not that it was meant to be that hard, but just assigning the names to the gods was kind of fun.
I agree. I like being able to just use the little bits of actual knowledge that I have to help with puzzles.
And like the little clues, like the Athena having armor and the owl. And
I was very happy when you immediately got that one.
yeah, that was cool, and it was cool. I liked doodling the little statues and imagining them. That was a highlight.
Yeah, I thought the numbers thing with the croquet, I almost said rickets again, wickets, where it was fun because it was kind of like, I liked that they were a little like oddly drawn because that made it more of like a mystery, but then slowly being like, oh, it's like this. And
it was interesting, that one, right? Because a lot of the reason, like we talked about the fives being such an odd shape, but a lot of that was because you were saying that as you were doing it, it's like, oh, I could do it this way, maybe I could do it another way, or maybe there's. But really, if you kind of follow the way they're set up in the picture, the order that you do them
ends up being more rigid than it appears.
It's much more rigid than you first think. Like it's generally always going to end up as that shape. There's no real way to knock a ball through those hoops and do them in a different order.
And that's why the fives look a little bit weird.
Yeah, that's why the fives is weird, because that top one has to be so far out that it can only go across the whole top without ever turning away to other stuff. So like we started to originally it looked a bit more like a 5, but then it was like, when you get to the top, you could
there is some ambiguity. It could have turned into a 9 or something.
Turn into a 9 or something. So they ended up a little bit more ambiguously placed, so that generally, like if you just go through each one, it's generally an unambiguous answer.
So normally when we play test these, normally the way it works, I write the entire room, I do everything, and then we do a recorded play test where it's the first time that Billy has seen any of it as he goes through them. This puzzle with the croquet stuff, I was so unsure about whether it had any potential that I drew the first couple of numbers. I just drew like a 5 and a 6 and a 7 using the croquet things, and I immediately gave them to Billy, completely contextless. I just said, if you saw this in a room, what would you do? And I have told you it's croquet and that's it. And because I needed to know whether it had any chance of succeeding. And thank God he found numbers.
Yeah. But I do remember that. It's like the 7. And I think it was good for you as well, Jonah. You immediately was like, oh, must be a 7. Like that's kind of like, that got you onto numbers instead of letters. Because like a 6 can be a B and a 5 can be an S. And an I can be a 1 can be an I. So the 7 was a nice inclusion on your part, Danny. But Jonah, you saw that immediately when we started going through that. You're like, oh, wait, hold on. That can't be anything but a 7. So let's think about it.
Yeah, I like the design of the 7 because it makes you kind of think about how a 7 is like it's 3 points. It's so funny how it can be. It's like just a right angle.
Yeah.
I always draw a line through my 7.
Oh, you do the European 7s.
I draw
a line and a little thing at the top because in like fourth grade, somebody told me it was cool, I think, and I was like, I'm going to draw the coolest 7s ever, and now I just do it.
That is cool.
I never used to cross my 7s until I was working in quality assurance in a lab, and I needed to be like, this is a 7, please don't think it's a 1, or I'm going to have to redo all of my tests.
On very official forms, I cross my 7s.
I never got the whole European 7 thing until I saw, like French people write a 1, and it's just like this. It's like basically looks exactly like a 7 with like a little bit of a turn down.
Absolutely. Oh, good.
thing,
Now
and I
there's
was
a
like,
really loud rescue helicopter flying above us.
You don't know it's a rescue helicopter. It could be attacking people.
Yeah, it could be in the military.
Let's hope not.
Oh, man.
But yeah, it's an interesting one. And then like the next step of that was, like, is it a 6 and a 7, or is it a 67? Is it a 1 and a 2? And it was really cool to listen to you go through like the logic of how to interpret numbers in an escape room. And it's a really good idea for people who haven't done an escape room. Like if they listen to this episode, you can pick up a lot of tips. Like immediately, Daniel, you made the point of like, okay, well, if these were all the way up until 26-ish, then we could know they represent letters of the alphabet. But some of them, if we treat them as together, they go too high. All of them are lower than 8, which is the number of statues. So maybe they're referencing each individual statue, like the 6th statue, the 7th statue, which is where we got Daddy Gurr or whatever.
Daddy-getty.
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 But like, it was really good to listen to you go through all that, because like those are such important tools when you're solving puzzles and dealing with numbers and dealing with this. It's like, what do we know? Like 8 statues, no number higher than 8 is a perfectly great connection between the two.
Mm-hmm.
If they, it's a 67, it can't be alphabetic. If it's good to go through those things, and I think that really helped. And then the only thing that was missing was something that
the fact that these individual numbers were connected to individual statues.
There was already a connection that like 6 and 7 were connected to statue 1. And that was something that I think you had at the start in your head. And I think if you'd done the whole process then, you would have gotten that straight away. But because it was like you started that process and then you went off, got new information about the statues, and then came back, I think that got a little bit lost in the mix. And that was the one element that you guys needed to click it in. Because as soon as you remembered that, as soon as you got back to, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, you were doing absolutely the right thing with trying to make letters work, like with the actual postcard and stuff, trying to index the letters there. But it just needed to be to the statues instead.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was great.
But
I'd be curious to see like some sort of dual thing where it's like you have some people who it's their first time doing an escape room, and then have a professional escapist. I don't know if that's a thing. Do the escape room.
Pretty close to.
Yeah.
It is, because it is one of those things we've talked about that before as well. Like, there's also like a sort of language that you get with not just escape rooms, but with puzzles in general as well. And again, like Daniel at the start, you're talking about like we're finding clues, but we're not finding input points yet. So let's just keep looking until we get an input. Is again like it didn't fully pan out in this one, but it's a very good strategy, right?
Yeah.
And especially because like once you know the inputs, it helps you recontextualize the clues. Like once you find, oh, okay, we need 6 letters, or oh, we're gonna need a number between 1 and 100, or so. Like it helps you go back and look at all the clues you found. Now that you know like the restrictions on your input, like that is again, if we're talking about trying to learn how to do escape rooms well, this is lots of good stuff in this episode, just from like how should you approach things, what are you looking for, and we get that a lot. Like we've had guests on before who are not as like aware of that sort of a thing, and so they will find a puzzle and be like, let's just do this over, like let's just look and really drill in and try and solve this in its entirety.
Right.
And it's like, well, you don't know where the input is yet, so you can't solve this. Like you just, and it's hard on our end listening there being like, you're never going to get it. You've been going we should probably tell you to move on, but like it's good. But so you were
like
good at that as a group, the two of you, like being able to be like, let's look at this. Okay, I reckon now's the time to move on. We'll come back later.
Right. How many letters, this is kind of random, but how many letters were in the flower puzzle? I wonder, like, could we have sort of brute forced that? And
in theory, there were not that many options to go with. I was more banking on the fact that just because there were already a couple of options, I feel like there are only 2 real letters per thing. I don't even remember what's in the middle one. But yeah, I started out by drawing the correct answer and then trying to fit in fake letters around them.
Right.
And then just other spaces wherever they go. L's probably feature in a couple of places.
I'm looking back at these flowers now. Obviously, there's the T and the U in the first one, so it's hard to tell exactly which one it is. On the second one, I can see if an I, if you go down or the left side,
easy one.
Sort of. There's the A. So there's a couple of possible options.
The
and then
first one and the second one
C.
both have potential L's if you're looking for
Oh,
L's.
yeah. So there's a couple.
I think that one was actually an S. I think that C that you're talking about keeps going.
No, you're right. It's an S, not a C. It just keeps on going down the right side in the third one. So you could get an S out of that. So I think it's just enough to like
ambiguate it,
deter the brute forcing.
But even then, you can't solve the rest of this puzzle. You can't get the full combination until you've seen the car decal. And once you have seen the car decal, you can confirm the flower puzzle very quickly.
Yeah.
So I figured even if you thought you were guessing some of the letters correctly, which you absolutely were, didn't really matter.
Yeah. If you picked the exact right 3 letters,
as long
then
as,
there's no real way to get to the dolphins.
All that was needed was the acknowledgement that for the flowers, you would probably get more information later. Didn't matter how much of it you could have solved on its own, as long as you got that feeling in you that, oh, there is just more than one option here. So I'm going to get something to clarify it later. And then the clarifying was super easy.
Yeah. If we had put everything together, we might not have thought Europoo was the like if we had a few different
Europoo,
that wouldn't jump out to me as like, oh, it's
That's a great
I think also for me it was satisfying to have that kind of false set where like we had quote unquote we kind of thought we solved the flower puzzle and then got the other 3 letters and then being like, oh no, this is gibberish, having to backtrack a little bit and then like resetting that. I think, I don't know, you could describing it sounds frustrating or something, but I thought that was nice because it was a little bit more of like a push and pull payoff thing there, and then like doing the final bits made it feel more like everything was coming together at once.
Yeah, great. Also, thank you. I was nervous about this idea of you potentially getting random feeling letters and not knowing if they're right, and then the final solution isn't exactly a normal word, so I was a little bit worried, but thank you. You spotted what it was right away. Billy, in the playtest, you did not, so that made me feel a bit bad.
Well,
You're not as childish as me.
You did end the escape room on the code "You're a poo," so you know.
I was going to say I liked that tone thing because I think escape rooms in general can be sometimes a little bit like, you know, mystery-esque and mysterious and I liked which this one was in many ways, but I liked the ending on the sort of
gotta end on
silly,
a good poo note. Yeah.
I like the
tone. It was very difficult to say, all right, so what's the most nice, normal escape room appropriate way that I can basically have these neighbors make their lock F off Amy?
Sure. I also think that's a good example of something that's like a bit harder to get when you're designing puzzles like this, which is like when you were doing the statues in the croquet ones, and you started going through options, like when you were sequencing the message and you were putting in first letters, you were getting gibberish, and you were taking that to mean like, oh, this gibberish means this is not going to be right? So you think I've just because there was nothing that like explicitly told you should sequence these letters or you should pick the first letters, that when you get gibberish from that, you think, okay, well, I've obviously done it wrong. I should find a whole new method. Whereas for the final puzzle, you get gibberish from doing the 16, 13, whatever, and counting those numbers. You still get something that doesn't make any sense. But you don't feel like, oh, well, I shouldn't have counted it. It's like, oh, no, that was so clearly correct. Yeah. There must be one element I'm missing.
That is interesting.
And so it's really interesting to see. Like, it's a subtle thing that, like, on one, you get something that doesn't make sense, so assume your methods must be incorrect. And the other one, the methods must be correct because they just felt so clear that
That's
gibberish
true.
now is
you
like,
saw that clothesline, you immediately went, okay, these ones are just letters of the alphabet. And they absolutely were, just with some adjustments. And that's really interesting that your heads jumped immediately to that one being right and never left that as well, which was correct.
From a puzzle design point of view. Yeah. I don't know. It's a funny one. Because like Daniel, you've also like we talked about Inscription before we started. You know, you did like the little escape room within that space.
Some of the puzzles are ridiculously hard.
But do you have like when you were designing puzzles like that? Like, do you have that sort of like experience of like how you know or how the player is going to know they're on the right track even when they're not getting an immediate answer? Like, is this something you think about when you're designing? Do you find it in the play testing?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to more the play testing because I usually just try my best to make something intelligible the first time, but it's never going to be quite right until I get players playing it and telling me what they think. Inscription was a little weird, right? Because a lot of the clues involved playing the game. Like in order to understand like the wardrobe slider puzzles, you had to actually play the game, and they weren't meant to. Like the whole idea was to go back and forth, like integrate the two things. So I don't know if they were like if Inscription was like it's a standalone escape room, it would really hold up that well. Trying to do other things.
Oh yeah, the way that you are taught things is very unique to the game.
Yeah. Because you're right, there is an element like that where it's sort of like where people do, you can do chess puzzles, where it's like here's like a chess setup, and like can you
cannot do them?
Can you finish in 2 moves, or like and those are so built on like you've learned the game of chess, now apply the rules you've learned to a fun little scenario. And I think some of the Inscription puzzles had that element. It was you learned how to fight a bear with a weasel. Great. Now here's a simulated fight between some various other animals. Can you fix this? Can you finalize it? Can you put it in your So it was more like that type of a puzzle of these like exploiting the rules of a little game, but also a game that you didn't know the rules to,
which is very very The Witness / The Lookalike in its way.
Yeah, teaching you a new game and then giving you puzzles built on that framework. It's a nice way to present these puzzles and to learn them, and like you say, to mean that it's not self-contained. It's not its own. It's like not like take a break from playing one thing and do a whole different game. There's that connectedness is key to solving it. It's no look. Hey, it's nicely done. It works very well.
Oh, it's great. I love that feeling in games. We're at an interesting stage with games, and I feel like you don't get this as much in escape rooms yet, but maybe there are more out there than I think of, where a lot of games are learn by losing. And we've definitely got this with Inscription. Took me a lot of losses before I got anywhere. Hades.
Classic.
If you don't lose enough in Hades, the story is worse. As I've gotten better at the game and started new games, the story doesn't feel as good. It feels great when you allow yourself to lose a lot. Pretty much. I mean, a lot of these roguelites are the ones where you get to maintain stuff through runs.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like The Witness has something very similar in that sort of regard, because they do tell you when you get a puzzle wrong, it highlights for you what you've done wrong without telling you why. And so learning by getting things wrong is a really enjoyable game mechanic now.
Do you think that's something that when we're talking about escape room design, does that have a place in escape room design?
I mean, I would hope so. Can you think of any specific examples?
Well, I feel like you have done that occasionally.
Really?
And I can't, but my problem is I can't remember what. I'm sure there are puzzles where I've looked at puzzles and thought, I have no way to do this. And it's only once you start trying and realizing what input fails or how it fails, like, you get more information.
It's a difficult one to try to work with an escape room, because so many people for escape rooms look at a thing and go, I do not have an answer for this, and I haven't found any information about it, so I should ignore it for now. That's definitely a strong instinct.
I believe I have this in my head because I think we play tested it and I went, well, I'm just not going to do this puzzle. And you were waiting for me to do something so I could learn.
Yeah, I think it's just one of these things where the different mindsets are there and you have to really force a certain mindset if you want that to work in an escape room. You've got to tell people that it is okay.
And I think it works better for computer games because people in computer games love to poke, right? Like in a computer game, you want to poke around at stuff. You want to like go into the corner and just start tapping A on stuff and see what happens. So you can rely on that instinct. And you're right, escape rooms, I think you don't want to, it's harder to poke around as much. You want to just know. You want to be like, no, I'm smart. I can sit and I can figure this out.
I assume I go into escape rooms to feel smart. So the idea of going into an escape room just to be told several times, no, that's wrong. Learn faster. Maybe a lot of people have my level of insecurity in escape rooms, and so they just don't want that to happen, and so they don't try.
But yeah, it is interesting.
I know that's a big thing in physical escape rooms, right? Where it's like, you have to nail everything to the wall and screw it in, and like because people will be like, well, maybe this is a clue, and they're like ripping out, just like the set and like taking all the things, so they have to be built like super tough.
Yeah, I'm generally the exact opposite of that. I won't touch a goddamn thing, and I'll assume that nothing is important.
But I mean, look, it is one of those things that's interesting, right? Like we can do that in our setting, and in video game development, you can do the same thing, right? Generally, your environment is quite robust. Like you don't have to be like, oh, people have pressed A on this portrait too many times. I have to replace it because the hinges are getting bad. It's like, no, it will open infinitely. And in our case as well, right? We can we can have you do whatever. Like you could say, like, oh, I'm smashing all the statues. We're like, yeah, that's sweet.
Very little of this room would have worked in a real escape room.
It's like, what's the reset for a smashed imaginary statue? You just imagine that it isn't smashed anymore. And like, you're fine. And so I think we in like this field in game development and other stuff, you have the capacity much more than a physical escape room to play with physical elements and to play with trial and error and messing around with stuff. Because as you said, in an escape room, if it's not bolted down, you've got to assume someone's going to break it. You have to have a couple extra copies on hand because if a player can touch it, it's going to get broken. And so maybe that's why, from like a design point of view as well, there's, you don't want people to fiddle too much. And then occasionally we have rooms, we've had guests on recently who've talked about this. Every now and then you get a room where they're like, no, we're fine with you breaking this thing because we have 10,000 of them on a pallet out in the back. So yeah, smash it up. I would never do that because I've been trained. I've been trained to be polite and not smash things in an escape room.
I think we compartmentalize our brains into what rules are allowed in what environment very specifically, quite rigidly. Even in any sort of video game, I really can take a while. I can get really annoyed at a video game or a TV show or anything if I went into it with an expectation for what mindset I had to be in and it turned out to be wrong and I have to really go back and correct myself. And that could be a problem. Definitely got that first time I played Dark Souls. I didn't know what I was getting into and what sort of game to expect, so I freaking hated it.
Yeah, true.
And so yeah, I had to learn. I wouldn't say I've learned by dying every time I die in Dark Souls, but whatever, I guess dying is part of it.
I wonder if there's an escape room where you have to like physically smash through drywall. That'd be pretty awesome. Right? Like a room in a room, and it's like that's the correct answer is like you have to kick down the entire actual wall, and behind it is like something secret.
That'd be
that'd be infuriating. It has like a padlock, but you have to like kick down the door. Like there's no answer.
That'd be the worst. There's a padlock and a puzzle. So, like seems like it's right, and there's like a hammer in the corner of the room, and the real answer is to like smash the entire.
Yeah, right. And it's one of those things you'd so have to prep them for it because no one's ever going to be like, maybe I just smashed down the wall. It's really funny when
if you were in an escape room and the voiceover said, just break that wall.
How
many times would it have to tell you before you did it?
I mean, I've done that in escape rooms before where you're like, you want to do something and you're looking at the camera and you're like, I'm going to turn. If you need to stop me, tell me, because I'm about to. All right? Okay, here I go. Just because you're like, I think this might break this object and I need someone. Yeah. I'm giving them all the warning I can that I'm about to do this.
It'd be a good prank on those people who you said like they're almost pro level escape room players to just put them in a room where every solution involves breaking down the door or like smashing the
you gotta really mess with it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, like this talk, like expectations of the medium that you're in. I still remember. I don't know if anyone else ever played these because I can't remember the names of them or what it was. But I remember in like I don't know maybe the mid 2000s. When, everyone was playing Flash games and Flash games were such a fun thing. And there was one that was like, you would solve issues in the game by like, okay, well, you should be changing the time on your internal computer clock.
Yeah.
That's how do you make this game go? Like, the game is like, oh no, I'm going to have to wait a whole day. And then nothing happens. You're meant to just go into your game. They're expecting you to go to your computer and change the time forward one day. And then that would trigger stuff in the Flash game. And I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, what the hell are you talking about? How do you even know, Flash game? How do you know? And I think Metal Gear Solid did that, where there's one where you have to like change a controller port to port 2 to finish a boss fight.
There is one single Professor Layton puzzle where you have to blow into the DS.
Yeah, like all these things where you just
in the entire series.
They break the rules a little bit and people just get stuck forever. It's like, what are you talking about? How would I do this? This is against the rules of the medium that I've learned. And it's just really interesting when you play with stuff like that. I don't know. I don't have a point to the end of that sentence. That's what I'd say. What do you guys? So you've now played this. This is the first one of this little mini arc. We're an alien. Yeah. We've crashed. I don't know. I'm as blind. Danny knows, but I don't. What the next 3? There are 3 more episodes. What do you reckon's going to happen?
Yeah. How do you have reckon the story might build?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I suppose we're trapped in this cellar now with this young man.
So route 2 is kill the child.
Not a child.
Well, it'll be a bit like the Cronus statue, maybe, and
Yeah.
they'll start things off. And maybe with the child's or the young man's help, we'll escape from the cellar, or maybe into the house or something.
What do you know about this young man? What have you learned
He
about
said
him?
it was an alien apocalypse.
He's like a prepper, right?
Oh,
He's
he's
a
a
prepper.
prepper, right.
Yeah.
So he'll kill us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't imagine prepper ex-alien meat like being super friendly.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. Because, I don't know where it's going to go. Because obviously, like, ideally, we're trying to escape Earth.
Escape from planet Earth.
Escape from
We got to fix our ship.
Earth. We're
That's
gonna
true.
we're gonna fix. Maybe that's the second thing. Maybe it's like, hey, can you help me fix my ship? And he's like, yeah, I can help you, but we gotta go down to the. This is my prepper voice. But we gotta go down to the alien parts store, and then you go and you do it, and it's a road trip, and there's no escape room. It's just a fun road trip. Maybe that's it.
There's always one part of the movie that's just character building and not plot progressing.
Yeah. There'll be one of these escape rooms. We'll have nothing happen. We just sort of chat for a while. Yeah, I've got no idea. I don't know what like the next steps will be. I feel like in the playtest, I outlined what I reckon they would be, and I've completely forgotten because they felt good when I did them then. But now I've got no idea. You meet the kid. Surely we have to get attacked by the government. If it's got some kind of
it is
ET
an
like,
alien
that would be
movie.
awesome.
so maybe end of like the second thing is like suddenly the government finds out you're there, and then the third one you got to escape
jail
from
cell.
from a government lab, and then the
Observation
fourth one,
Like a
chamber
black
where you're being
site?
poked with stuff.
and then the fourth one, you escape from the black site in episode 3, and then the fourth one is like get to your ship and fix it up and get out of here.
And then, I have to also go with the fact of I like putting twists in my arcs.
You've been a human the whole time, and everyone else is an alien. The Earth observation program is to reclaim Earth from the aliens who took it over and forced you into space and grafted an extra eye onto your forehead.
Yeah, when's the 3? I was waiting for the puzzle with binoculars with the third eye.
Can I just make a note? I read it wrong as I was doing it because I sort of just skimmed over it and assumed I'd made a typo in my notes. The very first lines that I have are, everything hurts, your head is pounding, your hearts are still racing. And I immediately thought, oh crap, I accidentally wrote this with 2 people in mind. I better change that.
Nope, just a single alien with
Yep.
2 hearts. Oh, so you're the Doctor. This is a Doctor Who fanfic. And we've got to travel back in time to stop ourselves from crashing.
So, no, that was just all giving
Time
you some
travel
alien
puzzles
building
can
in
be
the
fun.
first paragraph. How did this, because I'm going to assume you've had some escape room experience. I assume not a huge amount of audio tabletop escape room experience.
Yeah, I don't think either of us have done that before.
No.
So what sort of feelings does this have compared to a real escape room for you?
Oh, I mean, like writing the notes was really cool. I kind of enjoyed that aspect of it, which you wouldn't do. Yeah, I mean, I guess you sometimes write on a piece of paper, but I wasn't like drawing like the scene, like drawing the backyard and like the houses nearby. So that was kind of neat. I enjoyed the visualization aspect of it.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Dungeons and Dragons or something where it's like, you get a lot of mileage out of descriptions. It's crazy how much visual descriptions can be like transportative, in a way, without, like there's visuals in this, but they're representative more than they are depicting, I think, which is good. I like that.
And a lot of it was just, I could have read that out, but people are going to get sick of my voice.
True. It is fun, and it is. I think when we first started doing these, like it was, I think it was kind of surprising how much it still also feels like doing an escape room, like in terms of like the steps and like it doesn't feel like an entirely unrelated experience. You're like, this is an escape room. Like I'm following the rules of how to do that. I'm looking at this. It's it's so much easier, right? Like there's a thing we've talked about before where it's like in an escape room, to make it look like a real office, you have to say, put all the stuff on the walls, put the desk there, put these there. And then people get obsessed with all those details because they're like, oh no, there's this on the wall and this here and there's 2 notes. And like maybe they're all clues, And I like that in this one, you can just sort of say, first of all, picture an office. Great. Now you've pictured the office. You've filled in all those details yourself. So you know they're not clues because you are picturing the chair and you're picturing the desk and you're picturing the walls. And now we describe three things.
The important ones.
Like if you went to an actual escape room and there were only like the couple of small things that you describe, you're like, oh, it feels like such a sparse space. But so I really like that flow of being able to be like, fill all the detail in your mind, but then you don't get caught up on it because you filled that detail and you know it's not a clue.
Unless they've incepted you weeks earlier.
That's true.
Which is what it felt like reading the treasure hunt in Athens.
I know what
I've
happened there.
Heard anyone say that phrase before. Like,
it's like, oh wow, you created a scavenger hunt in Athens? That's a coincidence. This room has a scavenger hunt.
Crazy.
It is, but yes, absolutely not planned, obviously, because we didn't know until we started the recording.
No, I just play a lot of Hades and do Greek Duolingo on my phone.
Oh yeah, cool.
I was going to ask, now that we're back in the post show, you made a scavenger hunt. It is in Athens. You are not in Athens.
Were you in Athens?
Were you there at the time? Did you do the whole thing remote?
No, I lived in Athens for like 2.5 years. So
okay.
me and a friend of mine who were living there decided to do a urban scavenger hunt. Like it's like a permanent installation.
Yeah, so that's still a thing now.
That's awesome.
Yes, as I said, as of yesterday, it may be in semi-functioning working order, but
how
all the
was it
clues
like
are
destroyed? Like what happened?
Did an important wall collapse or something?
Yeah.
Part of the one clue was hidden inside an art installation that I had done, an interactive art installation in Athens, and that finally came down yesterday. And it was like we knew that was one of the possible. So we might just put in another clue and put it in. But the thing with having talk about stuff that people will mess with. All these clues are essentially metal sheets that are chained to various objects in public space. So people can do whatever they want to them. That's the whole thing is made out of like steel and epoxy essentially. So we've had to reinforce already some of the clues and stuff. So it's kind of a constant battle, but it's a loop. So regardless of anything, you'll be able to find parts of it if you go to the
good.
First part of this. Yeah,
that did line up with a question that I had, because we've been working on just doing some collaborative stuff with some people who are doing like physical stuff, physical scavenger hunts, physical escape rooms. And Billy always gets on my case about saying, no, someone's going to break that, someone's going to smash that, and not trusting anyone in the public. Should I trust the public?
Well, there's a certain, you have to go beyond trust and see the fun in smashing objects in public and just accept that it will happen. And it's less so of a, we're mad that it's going to happen. And it's more so that like, it's a complete inevitability. I remember one time we were putting up a clue and this child that was probably like 6 or 7 years old saw us putting it up and just eyes got wide. He had this massive metal, there's like an unsupervised child, a huge metal rod, like a big metal rod. The second we've installed it, like he just comes over and starts smashing the lock that it's been put on with as hard as he can with a metal rod. And we're like, can you just like please leave? Like there's nothing. It's just a, there's no. And he's like, it happened to be this one lock that was like the least strong lock in the whole thing because it had to fit into a specific space. And he was just like, no, I'm going to smash it. I'm going to keep smashing it until it's smashed. And we're just like, all right, I guess we have to.
Children are terrifying sometimes. Not long ago, I was riding my bike. We have a lake near us, so I was riding near the lake, and I rode past, and there was a small child. She was holding a stick. She saw me coming, and her eyes got that same wideness, held up the stick as I was driving past. She wanted to throw it at me. She wanted to jam it in my wheels or something. She wanted to see me go flying.
Yeah, it's a perfectly understandable and wonderful, impulse. But yes, people will try to. I mean, the only problem you'll really have is if somebody with authority really wants to take your thing down. There's nothing you can do about it. If someone with an angle grinder who's part of a government wants your. Except there was I've have this fantasy of a portable welding rig. That's the ultimate street art tool because welding stuff is quite hard to take off. Anyway, that would be a really cool scavenger hunt, a all welded scavenger hunt or an all hidden scavenger hunt in logos of industrial machinery in cities where it all looks like it's part of the, it's the serial number of a dumpster, and it's a real serial number on a real dumpster, but it's, you have to
the
go to that
council
corner
can't be
of the
like, oh, don't put your art here. We're going to throw this dumpster out. No, it's your dumpster. You fool.
Well, and they won't even know, it's like
Yeah.
who sees a serial number on a dumpster and thinks that it's part of a
Yeah, that's
project.
usually the sort of thing I think about when I go with these things. I think, all right, what's a really funny street name around here so we can point to that street sign?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I did have a fight with my creative partner once about putting up a sticker, and I was like, the sticker's going to come down. It was in a very hidden place where like it was all full of these old, very crabby Greek people, like being like, and so in the middle of the argument, like we see this old man walk up, and we're like gesturing towards it, and we're like, yeah, look, these people there's a sticker, on that thing there that's probably been there for years. And he was like, and I'm like, no, someone's going to take that off. And as we're gesturing to it, the old man like gets this curmudgeon-y look, and he goes over and he rips the sticker off with like lots of, because he thought that we had something to do with the sticker. And I was like, you see, they'll do anything.
Oh, wonderful. All right. So do we have anything else we want to say about the room or about?
I think I've exhausted
Quick
everything to this room.
stickers?
Not much changed between playtest and this.
No, the playtest pretty much this was a very smooth one. Sometimes we do a full overhaul after we're playtesting it. This one was
Yeah.
pretty much designed as play.
It's a hard room, but we didn't change anything.
Yeah, could we have made it easier? Yes. I think there was one part where I had the same initial response of like, we are missing 2 dolphins. We should take 2 dolphins away from the dolphin number. We are missing 1 turtle. We should take that turtle number away, which was your initial feeling as well. And then there was the note that's like,
It's an interesting
if they
one
are
'cause
missing, you need to
as soon
add
as
them
you
on.
look at the note again, you see
It
that it
just
says the
has
word
the
added and that
words
stands
add-on.
out. But to
you
think,
just have to try both, and so
yeah,
fine.
and I think that's sort of where we got to in the end. It's like, what's the worst case scenario? You do one, then you do the other. One makes more sense than the other.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
You
just
move
want to
on.
make sure that there is something that tells you that one of them
Yes.
was the right
Yeah,
thing
there
to
isn't
do.
there is something that unambiguates.
Yeah.
Disambiguates?
Disambiguates.
Unambiguifies? Whatever.
Wikipedia says disambiguation.
But that's for telling 2 articles apart.
Disambiguation,
not for making sure you know
disambiguation.
how to add dolphins. Well, I think that's good. You two did really well. It was lovely to hear you play through the room. It was you were on the right track all the time, and even when you get caught up in stuff, it was because you were just trying and trying. Like there was no point where it felt like you were lost or
Yeah,
stuck. It was-
completely at a loss. Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, you can tell from the way you go through process, you can tell that you're both puzzle people.
yeah. So it worked out well, even though
Yeah.
Jonah refuses to admit it.
Yeah, well, he'll only glue the
I'm a
puzzles
secret
together.
puzzle.
He won't design.
that's,
Um,
that's truer than you would ever believe.
But no, it was great, and it was lovely to listen to you. I'm excited to see what the next 3 steps of this. I can't even say it. Terrescapetrial. This is nonsense.
Extrascapes terrestrial.
Extrascapes.
Is that-
Skips. I don't think the movie would have done well if that was its subtitle. E.T. Escape. So thank you so much for coming on and playing the room. It
Thank
was
you so
wonderful to
much.
have you. It
Yeah,
was great
thanks for
to
having
listen.
us. That was a treat.
Yeah, thank you.
If people are listening and they want to see more of the stuff you're doing, or is there any way you want me to? Do you want to send them?
And
do you want to
please
have a
do,
little plug
everybody.
moment
Well
here?
worth it.
Go, Jonah.
Oh, I'll plug my itch, Senzel, JSENZEL.itch.io. If you want to know things
Yeah.
about the inner workings of my life, the latest
Wonderful. There'll
games.
be links to that in the show note. And Daniel,
Yeah, I just Twitter D Mullins Games, and then there's my website from there, and pinned tweet is usually something with my games, so probably a good place to go. Yeah.
wonderful. And yes, look, for people who haven't played Inscription, that was the thing that sort of got us on to you and the stuff you make, and it's a fantastic game. It's fun, and I think the people who enjoy this sort of stuff and listening to the show, if you enjoy listening to the show,
Yeah.
you'll like it. If you enjoy, here's a specific one, and this won't mean anything to you two, but for people listening along at home who really like Jen's rooms, all of Jen McCaig's rooms that she's written for us, you will love Inscription. So you should go and play that. There's similar sort of meta levels and things opening and changing as you go. So definitely check it out. It's a fantastic. Then you can go back and play the other ones. Check out all the stuff on Jonah's itch page. There's so much for you to do now. I've given all of you listeners at home homework. Go and play all these fun things and enjoy yourself. If you also want to help support the show, tell a friend, leave a review.
This is our show.
Spread the word. Our show. Our great show. If you want to help us get people to listen to us get this podcast, check all that out. There should ideally by this point also be a new mystery on Solve This Murder. So we're back with Solve This Murder. If you want to hear a fun murder mystery where we try and solve a murder mystery, you can go and check that out. That's back now and should be fairly regularly back from this point on.
Fingers
hopefully.
crossed.
Fingers crossed. So you can go and check that out at Solve This Murder. And if you want to help support the network, all the shows we make, Escape This Podcast and Solve This Murder and anything else we do, you can always sign up for the Patreon. Anybody has a chance to appear as an NPC. If they donate at any level. I'm assuming there were some in this room.
We got a couple. Thank you so much, Amy Duncan Williamson, Amy, the HOA president. We have Matt. Oh, let's hope I'm getting my pronunciations okay. We had Matt, who is this prepper neighbor. We'll get a little bit more of him later,
Lovely.
Matt Kaiser. And the neighbor who left the note, Bella, as well. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. So you've all appeared in the room. And there's also bonus audio for $5 donors. You can listen to the playtest audio for this room, and you can listen to our other weird series of 2-minute mysteries where we try and solve Donald J. Sobel's 2-minute mysteries, and it gets weird and strange. And again, I said this to some other, if you're signing up new, go back to the first one. There's a lore that builds up as we get more and more insane trying to solve these mysteries. So please, go back to the start. And then there's badges and other things for $10 donors.
I have some my room sketches for some of them. I don't normally show my room sketches, but I've been doing semi-effortful 3D sketches of some of the rooms, been posting those, and we're going to have a new writing little project up there.
Yes, either something that may have started or has not yet started for $10 donors is like a fun choose-your-own-adventure series that you can do through Patreon. It's good fun. All right, that's the best way to support us. But otherwise, tell a friend, tell an enemy, tell someone to listen. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you again, Jonah and Daniel, for playing. It was fantastic having you on. Let's all say bye. Thank you, Danny, for writing such a fantastic room. All right, let's all say bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I don't do that.
Bye.
I don't do the kindergarten sign-off.